Hello and welcome to Getting Your Money's Worth, the show that focuses on value. I'm Judith West, and our guest today is Leena Akhtar, Archives Director and Curator at the Museum of American Finance, correct?
Correct.
Okay, good. The Museum of American Finance. How long have you guys been in business, Leena?
Well, the museum was formed in 1988, right after the crash of 1987.
Right.
We were formed...
Which is hardly like a crash anymore.
Right, exactly. Right. We were formed to be an educational institution, first and foremost, but also to serve as institutional memory for Wall Street, because there was none. So
you got plenty to remember these days.
We do. Part of our mission is to preserve the lessons. So
what does that mean, institutional memory?
Basically, it's to preserve the lessons of financial history, which in this country it goes back to, I mean, when America was first founded. You've had bubbles ever since, since the first one that I've studied is like 1780s, and then you have them throughout the 19th century and also obviously during the 20th century and recently.
So was the Great Depression called a bubble?
No,
that was bigger than a bubble.
Yeah, that was a little bit different. I mean, that was definitely, there was a speculative bubble that led up to it, but the real crisis was I think what happened after the crash. I think it was about. So
you want to preserve these memories in order to help people avoid them?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, being that if you know what could happen, you'll take steps to avoid, to prevent it happening again.
To prevent absolutely making the same mistakes.
I think that this last go-around, there's a lot of folks that should have been at your museum studying history.
Agreed, absolutely.
Right. So how do you get people who, it's like talking to the choir. Do the folks in financial industry come down to see you, or is it the consumers that don't have a heck of a lot to do with making anything happen?
Our audience is very varied, and I would take exception to consumers don't make anything happen.
Okay.
Fact of the matter is that this crisis, a lot of it could have been prevented if people had been better informed about finance, if there had been more financial literacy. I
certainly agree with that.
And part of our goal is to promote financial literacy. Right. So with this credit crisis, I mean, what you have is a lot of, arguably predatory lending, and people selling securities all around the world that really had no value.
Exactly. They no matter how you sliced it or diced it, they were baloney.
Right, exactly. And the big lesson that we want to convey we have an exhibit right now up about the credit crisis.
Right.
And it's a teaching exhibit. It's for people who came into the museum in September, October of last year and said to us, we don't understand what's going on. Can you explain it to us? So what we did was we created a timeline that took people from the end of 2006 to about February, and we're going to update it. It's in the process of being updated. Just showed them how we got to the turmoil and all the government intervention that we're seeing now. And the big lesson that we want to convey is a very basic principle of risk management was ignored here, whereby people were making loans to borrowers who couldn't afford to pay them back.
But you know something, Leena? I'm with you on this financial literacy, but let's talk about that concept. How financially literate do you have to be to figure out that you shouldn't make a loan to people who can't afford to pay it back? I mean, isn't that kind of 101? Kids know that. Kids quickly learn not to loan things to folks that never pay them back.
There's two things, yeah.
So, I mean, isn't that kind of an instinctual thing that you know?
It should be, but there's two parts to this, right? I think the financial literacy comes into where people shouldn't have been taking those loans in the first place. Right. They should have known enough about mortgages and about lending and about interest rates to know that they couldn't pay them back.
But
the people who were making the loans were definitely at fault, and that I would, if you look at what happened, I would actually put it down to greed.
Yeah.
High upfront fees and bonuses and.
Yeah, but that's it. I mean, it's. If someone is making, it used to be, I don't know what they say now, but it used to be you had a formula. You knew that if you were making $35,000 or $40,000 a year, you were not going to be able to buy a $750,000 house. What happened to that almost common sense process that people just knew?
This is, I think, classically what you see when you see a speculative bubble. Okay, so housing prices were rising and rising and rising. You didn't have to be a genius to figure out that, if I buy a house and flip it around in 6 months, I get rich. You see your neighbors doing it. You see programs on TV about it. Everybody wants in on the action.
So it's kind of a fever.
Absolutely, it was a fever. And, you know, it worked. It was something that worked
for a while.
Until house prices stopped increasing, until supply exceeded demand or what have you. I mean, the mantra was, housing prices have not gone down since, I think it was like, since a little after World War II.
Right.
You know, they're
this
never,
is the first time in decades.
They're never going to go down. They're never going to go down. And this was the thinking. And this fueled all of this, this lending, all of this borrowing, all of these mortgages. Because think about it. Even if you're making a loan to somebody who has no assets, no job, no income, if the market is still rising, all they have to do is sit on the house for a few months and flip it around, and they can make money.
Right.
So
it took away all logic. In fact, there was expressions people used their houses as piggy banks, as ATMs.
Exactly.
You heard all these corny kind of buzzword expressions.
Exactly. And the other thing is, this isn't the first time that this has happened.
Really?
Right now, I'm writing an exhibit that's going to go up in the first week of September until mid-October. It's about the role of Dutch finance, early Dutch finance in the founding of New York and the Manhattan colony. And we go into the speculative bubbles in Europe in the 1720s. Same thing. Same thing.
So tell me something. Do folks learn from history?
If they know history, I think they learn from it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I was working at a financial services firm during the housing bubble. And when we started hearing things like, oh, it's never going to end, the bubble is never going to end, that's when the smart money was already long gone. Right. The smart money was gone because
in fact,
people know.
I think there's this axiom about the market. When like folks that make money have the contrarian point of view.
Yeah.
If everybody else is doing it, you shouldn't. You shouldn't be doing it. When
Absolutely.
They're out, you should be in.
Absolutely.
So that's that kind of oxymoron, or if you will. Right.
And again, I'm thinking of somebody we interviewed. We have an exhibit called Women of Wall Street on right now. And one of the women that we presented about was a woman called Isabel Benham, one of the first women to make partner in a Wall Street firm. She's turning 100 this year. And she said, well, I started my career during the Great Depression, and she called them hurricanes. And she's like, there have been 5 hurricanes, financial hurricanes, during my career.
That's a good expression.
And it was a really interesting way to think of it, because to her it was a storm to be weathered. And the way that you weather it is that you use common sense and you don't get carried away. Right.
Well, as a matter of fact, speaking about weathering the storm, we see now what the market's back now, what, 50%? About 50% from its low in March, or something
like that.
Yeah, something like that. You know, so we see now that folks who had a strategy, a course of action, and stayed on course, and didn't get out, are the folks that now are making a little bit of a comeback.
Right.
You can't time the market.
You can't. And I think the problem with trading on margin is that you will get knocked out first. Right. So I think the key to weathering the storm, so to speak, if you're in it for the long haul, is to have very deep pockets and to actually invest conservatively.
And have a good asset allocation.
In case something like this happens.
Have some kind of a safe harbor.
Exactly.
I want to go back to your exhibit, and the credit exhibit. We don't want to forget about banks here. We talk about people and people. This financial literacy business, you're not going to invite bankers down, or maybe you are. Shouldn't they be confronted with the results of their own actions and be made to kind of face the music of what they caused?
To a degree, I feel like they have been. I also feel like...
Well, I mean, if you hear about all these bonuses and things and all the profit that the banks are making now, you wonder what kind of a lesson they learned, Leena.
Yeah, it's embarrassing to them. I think that, and this is now my opinion, what we're going to see...
That's okay, that's what this is about.
Yeah, I think in the next few years we're going to probably see, as a result of the anger that this is
there is a lot
up,
of anger.
Yeah, a lot of it. And they're facing a real PR problem with this, because the bonuses got out, the fact that they're still sponsoring things got out, even though they're trying to be quiet about it.
Right,
you know,
no more logo shirts and things like that.
Exactly.
Right.
So I think that in the next few years you're going to see an adjustment, and I think that there's also going to be regulation that really
Which
curbs.
I hope is not too much regulation.
Right,
because
exactly.
sometimes it's... But... this business of anger, and we're seeing a lot of it. We're seeing a lot of anger now on the health reform. I think that it's not just the topic of health, but it's kind of the whole pot boiling over.
Right. Exactly. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of upset that the old system wasn't working or that it was corrupted by greed. And, I think that the waters are very murky because you can't really tell what the right course of action is now.
Exactly.
Things
You
have
know
to
how much is what. How is your museum funded?
Well, we have a membership program. We have a corporate membership program.
Really?
We have, private support.
You have schools that come?
We have many school groups that come.
I think yours. I'm hoping that this will get you some good press because I think they do a wonderful job. And we certainly need it. One of the things that I've spoken out about. I know you had said you had Women on Wall Street. Meryl Streep spoke out about it. There isn't really. How do people learn financial literacy?
This is the thing.
Where are they going to learn it from?
I don't think there's enough of a push for it. Muriel Siebert's foundation, in her foundation, she promotes financial literacy for young people. In fact, I was speaking to a friend of mine the other day who has a mom who taught high school for a long time, and she said, I'd really like to take these kids out for a year and not teach them algebra or anything like that, but teach them how to balance a checkbook.
Yeah.
How to deposit a check, how to do all these things, because these are real life skills.
Yeah, and also, really, a lot of this is also, going back to the banks, all this outlandish sending all these credit cards. I mean, the kids have, some kids, they have 5 or 6 or 8 or even, I've heard 20 credit cards.
Right.
They order a pizza on credit and pay interest for the next 3 years on the pizza that they ate.
Yeah, I think that is probably going to be curbed as well.
Yeah. So, what are your hours?
Well, the museum is open from 10 to 4, Tuesday through Saturday during the summer. And during the summer, we have a late opening on Wednesdays. We're open till 6 p.m. And the first hour during the summer is free, so 10 to 11.
Okay, so good. So, you're dedicated to promoting financial literacy.
Financial literacy, and again, serving as institutional memory.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have a few folks I'd like to recommend come down for the memory piece. That's for sure.
We actually have a pretty robust series of programs. We have lectures in the evening. Our Kaufman series. We have.
What is the Kaufman series?
Kaufman series is named after Henry Kaufman.
Right.
And we bring in speakers, people who've written books. In our fall lineup, we've got.
And are these no charge?
For members, there's no charge. There is a charge for non-members, but membership is also very reasonable, and you get our magazine, things like that. We also have a series that we've.
So folks who belong get their money's worth. I want to get that across.
Absolutely.
Right? Sounds like it to me.
Absolutely. And then we also have a series we've introduced recently, our Brown Bag Lunch series, where.
Oh, that sounds good.
We'll have a lunchtime event. Like yesterday, it was a fella who came from the Mercantile Exchange. He was explaining about pit trading, and he did a demonstration for how pit trading worked. And then next month,
which is something that's another conversation. I don't know myself. I should have gone. Right. I have an idea, but I'm not sure.
Exactly. Right. And then next month we're screening a documentary that's about the credit crisis. Yeah. So events like this.
Right. Okay. So dedicated to teaching financial literacy and memorializing the
lessons of financial history.
of finance. Okay. Leena Akhtar, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm Judith West. You're watching Getting Your Money's Worth. Thanks for watching.